Hello and welcome to our programme on Windrush 2020. Afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for agreeing to join us on this journey. Last year, we were able to be all together and celebrate or commemorate Windrush, where we had our dinner and our cultural day. But this year, it's actually going to be done in a completely different format. So, welcome and thank you for participating. First of all, I'd like to get each of you on this call to introduce yourself, to tell me a little bit about yourself and what Windrush has meant for you. And also, how have you coped with COVID-19 and being locked in? So let's go to Gloria. Gloria, would you like to start us off, please? Introduce yourself.
Hi, yeah, I'm Gloria King, and been in the UK, for 50 plus years. Came as a young person, so I had part of my secondary education in this country, and it was quite a strange experience coming from the Caribbean, arriving on a cold March day. Saw snow for the first time when we changed plane in New York. In respect of COVID, lockdown hasn't been too difficult. I mean, my husband and I are in total lockdown, so I've not been in a shop for 10 days. For 10 weeks, sorry, for 10 weeks. We are in lockdown looking after ourselves. The hardest part has been not seeing our family. Most of our family are in other places in the UK, so it's not like we can even sort of just drive outside and give a wave. So that's been hard. But because we've been so blessed by 10 weeks of sunshine, it's made it a lot easier. Mm-hmm. And quite a sort of reminder of the Caribbean in the sense that we've spent a lot of time outdoors, as we would have done had we been in the Caribbean.
And tell me, what has the Windrush experience been for you?
As I said earlier, I don't feel I've got much of a Windrush experience. Came to this country, flew in, whereas I know a number of people came on the Windrush and subsequently came on a ship. It was a short journey flying into the UK. And I mean, it was a cultural shock of the environment. The houses being different, the food being different, school being different, and that cold. And in those days, cold was different than perhaps some of you younger ones have experienced now, because there was lots of thick fog, lots of painful fingers and toes and whatever. It was climate change, I suppose, has changed. Yeah. Winters were tough. Winters were tough.
Thank you. So, Janice first, please. Introduce yourself. Tell me a bit about you.
Well, my name is Janice Carty. I came to the UK in 1970. A strange one. The way we travelled over was, I got a boat the first time on a plane to St. Martin. Thought we were going to land in the sea. Frightening experience that was. And then Antigua, where I met up with a white family that I was going to travel back to the UK on with. I traveled by plane. I met my mum and dad and my siblings for the first time at Heathrow Airport. It was an experience. It really was. It was so different. The whole different culture thing was a shock to my system.
How old were you when you got here?
I was 12. My secondary education was here. Settling in was a bit of because I was always a tomboy, climbing trees and whatnot, and fighting with my uncles because there wasn't many girls for us to play dress up with. It was all boys. And settling into school and being boisterous, and which I was boisterous. I find it difficult to to get along. But in the end, I did. It was after that, it was good being here. It was different. And at a point, I was glad that I was here. My parents sent for me here. So because the learning was different, if you see what I mean. Everything was different. There was no trees to climb. Getting to know my siblings was a task.
Yes.
But it was good. It was good. Now we are inseparable.
Okay.
Now the lockdown, it hasn't been too bad. It really hasn't been too bad. Working from home, it was hard at first, but then I had to cut off because it was a cut off. I had to have a cut off point because when you're working from home, there's never a cut off point. So my cut off point would be 5 o'clock, lockdown, go for a walk, and then come back and cook. So and so to me, it's not too bad. It wasn't too bad. I found it going into shops. That was a bit of a ado because it's like people didn't respect your space. So as soon as I get in, I find myself rushing back out again, and basically with stuff that I didn't want and not what I went for. But
because you wanted to get out there.
Yeah, I just wanted to get out. To get out. And it was just the shops. So now it's getting a little bit easier, but people are still in your space. But no.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Carol, over to you. Tell me a bit about you. The same applies to you, Windrush and COVID-19.
Hi, my name's Carol Carty-Sutton. I was actually born in the UK. So obviously I haven't had a Windrush experience as such. Obviously you hear about Windrush in the newspapers and all of that. So obviously I haven't had that sort of experience. So I can't really talk on it. But the lockdown has been a bit of a weird one. We find that, well, I'm actually still working. So to me, that working situation hasn't changed. What I'm finding very strange is that you can't go to the shops that you're used to going to. And also, when you actually do go to food shopping, it's a task on its own. People aren't observing the 2-meter rule. You have to queue to get in the shops. It's hard to get online shopping. It's just totally different to what we're used to. But I suppose we're just going to have to get used to the norm, because this is going to become the new norm. So
that's very true. But you guys have a passion for food. So that's really what I really want to get into. Your passion for food and what food means to you, and, you know, the experience of also when you talk about COVID right now and going shopping and coming out of the supermarket with things that you didn't go in for because you wanted to get out, having to find alternatives. Tell me, what's your experience been? Food. Tell me about your passion for food. Let's go for Gloria.
Love food, and mealtimes have always been a very important part in our family. Back in the Caribbean and here, it's the time when we all get together. We always sit down around the table. So food is important. When I came to the UK first, missed a lot of the things we got in the Caribbean. And although it wasn't that difficult, when I first came to this country, we lived in Paddington. And, you know, you could get some things, but the availability of Caribbean food wasn't, back in the early 60s, wasn't like it is now. So missed sort of fresh fish, missed going to the market and getting fresh meat. You know, the animal was killed that day was the meat we used to go. Really missed that. And I mean, I learned to cook. I was in primary school. When I could cook, I could, put the pot on and cook a pot of soup. I mean, soup is today, Saturday, a Caribbean thing. Hot weather didn't stop us having hot soup. And that was the tradition. And going to market on the Friday to get the meat for Saturday soup was, really, really important. So that's things like that that we miss. And when I sort of heard of fish and chips here, and the word chips conjures up all sorts of things for me. Certainly I didn't think food, and I thought chips, you know. And when I saw chips, but even more alarming, when I saw chips being served in newspaper, it was a very big culture shock. Going on to now, yes, we can get most things, but I think COVID demonstrate again the sort of denial of some of the food we're used to, because some of the shops aren't open. Initially, my shopping was being done by volunteers. I'm now shopping online, but you know, in shops that you can't get the things, you can't get Caribbean food, you can't get anything Caribbean. And yes, we can still cook rice and peas, we can still do jerk chicken, but the variety isn't there. But I love food, I love cooking, and the fresh things, you know, like the fresh fish, and I mean, even some of the shops that we shop in, some of the supermarkets, you know, stopped, or their fresh fish stall is just a sort of part-time now, whereas you could depend on it Friday, for example. You can't get, you know, and we know it's not as fresh as we got in the Caribbean, but we still sort of made do with it.
That's very true.
You can't get fresh fish.
Thank you. Carol and Janice.
Sorry, Rochdale, I wanted to say, with regards to Carol and Janice and their organisation, AXA UK, when we met last year, because for a while now in Slough, I basically thought it was important, and it's been on the table for a long time to bring all of the groups together. So last year we made a call out like the end of January to bring all of the Caribbean groups in Slough together. And we sat at that first meeting, and it sort of said, what ideas do you have? What would you like to see? And Janice, you know, confidently said, I think we need like a recipe book for the Caribbean islands. And it was submitted, the ideas that went around the table. And even though other islands also said, yes, you know, we also would want that. And at that time, Jamaica wasn't at that meeting. They came later, but that's one of the desires that Jamaicans have as well. So I think it is so important in our culture, food, you know. And one of the things, like Carol, I'm a born British. I'm here, born in Slough. But listening to today's interview and hearing how well spoken for a Jamaican person that Gloria is, I went to college. And when I went to college, I went to do catering. And my Anglian parents taught me how to speak, obviously. So one of the challenges was that going to college to do catering, you know, my dad would say, Christina, pass me the yodel. So I went to college, and I'm going, yeah, they brought out that, you know, that round scoopy thing, you know. And I said, oh, you need the yodel for the soup? And they said, you what? I said, you need a yodel for the, you know. So when nobody understood what I was talking about, because first and foremost, I'm saying soup, because that is at home, like Gloria just said so elegant, you know, on the weekend you're going to have soup. But I said it as soup. I don't know how, you know, later on I understand. I think I know how to, sometimes I have to think, how do you say, is it soup or soup? Soup or soup? You know, you had to kind of, certain parts in the language, you had to kind of go from, by hold it a seda to, oh yes, we're at. So for us, even though like Carol and myself, we're born here, we went to school here, we're the first generation of those born here, the language barrier to certain things, like how we would say it at school, comparing to how you would say it at home, it was very, very, you know. And when we say we have rice and peas, they go, rice and peas? You're having rice and peas? Because they thought it was the green garden peas that we were having with rice, but obviously for us it was something different. So I think the idea, what Janice and AXA UK are going to be piloting, the concept of having a joint Caribbean book, you know, yeah, I want Janice to speak about your desire for that and, you know, how that came along.
Can I just say something quickly before Janice comes on? Is that all right?
Of course.
Sorry?
Follow on from what Tina said and the importance of the recipe book. And my grandson, my eldest grandson, I talked about the little ones earlier that I missed, but my eldest grandson has been asking for a long time for a recipe book of the things that I have cooked, that I've taught him to cook, that he's eaten here. And more recently, and last year, it should have been last year, I didn't get it done. And I promised I'd have it for his birthday this year. His birthday is in August, the 1st of August. I haven't got much time. And since lockdown, he's been reminding me that recipe book is coming, isn't it? It's coming. And I've said yes. And I've started. But yeah, again, just demonstrating how important the food is, that he, is the 3rd generation, but he wants his recipe book from me of things that I've cooked and that he can carry that on. Yeah.
That's wonderful. So, Janice, tell us about your desire for the cookbook.
My desire for the cookbook is the Caribbean foods were dying out. And the youngsters are not interested, as I said before, they're not interested in eating Caribbean food. And that's an example of my younger son. Now, my elder son, he likes to cook, and he likes to cook Caribbean. He likes to cook Caribbean food. So that was my idea of getting a book together, also getting a place where we can actually teach them how to do dumplings, how to do rice and peas, how to cook saltfish, and to cook proper plain white rice and stuff like that. So my whole thing of it, because like I said, pea soup or pea soup, as they would say.
Well, the truth of the matter is, as an English person growing up, we've always, like Tina said, when you have soup in school, we always call it soup. But when we have soup, it's soup at home, because there is a difference between the two.
Absolutely.
Well, I've never known. I always say soup when I'm eating it out of a tin. Always soup or chicken soup. That's how I always denounce it.
Well, I had the biggest shock when I was at school when they said dumplings. So I was expecting dumplings like my mum.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I got the biggest shock of my life. So, hey, I understand.
Yeah, floating dumplings. Never been a fan.
Suet dumplings, I think they call that.
So what's going to happen about the book then?
I think as well, Janice, one of the challenges, Gloria would probably, Rochester, all of us would probably have this challenge, because seeing Granny, or as I say, Ma, or Mum, cook. When I was doing home economics and then I went on to Slough College to do catering, we were taught to measure stuff. So when I was trying to kind of carry on the recipes of Caribbean, if I said, how much rice, Mum? Christina, just try the rice. So how are we going to get around the fact that culturally we don't measure?
That is going to be difficult for me, because I just throw in. I don't measure. I can't follow recipes, as they say, from other books. I always got to put a little bit extra. I always put to taste. My food is to taste, not by what the quantities are. So it's going to be a bit difficult. Everything's going to be thrown in.
Right. Can I just answer the rice bit?
Uh-huh.
I've always been taught that if you're doing rice, you pour in the rice and you put a spoon in it, a wooden spoon in it. If the spoon stands up, it's good to go.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there you go. This is so different.
There's so much.
And if you're cooking a pastry, we've always been told, okay, throw in your flour, throw in your water, throw in all your ingredients. If it doesn't get to the kneading point, just keep adding flour. So how do you put that in a cookery book?
Wow. Put it this way. I always say there's always a way. But you know what? There's always going to be a disclaimer in your book. Always be a disclaimer. Because if you think about it, it's you're cooking to taste, right? So there'll have to always be a disclaimer. However, I still think that you're going to have to do the recipes, try it out a couple of times. But as you're going along, you weigh. And if you do the recipe 3 times, take the average weight.
Mm. Yeah,
Gloria.
That's really funny. I was laughing because it reminded me of two things. It reminded me of something way back in the 50s when I made my first fruitcake. My stepmother with whom I lived was in hospital, and I thought, I'll go make a nice fruitcake. And I always saw her making, she had her fruit soaking, and I thought I was doing what she did, but the cake was nothing like that. So that reminded me, of course, I had no idea about weight. But the second reminder was something that happened in our home this morning, that my husband was doing fried Johnny cake. And I came down and I said to him, that's a lot you've got. He said, yeah, I put the flour in, and then it just seems like, it needed more and now it's too much. So I said, well, that's what you're going to have to do. I said, next time. And he mainly makes the fried dumpling or the fritters. I said, next time you're doing it, call me and I will measure, because you have no idea. I mean, I measure things, but he has no idea about measuring. And so he couldn't tell, you put the flour in and you put the water till you... Yeah, so it's something that's not done. I mean, I was never taught at home what you do, how much you put in. It's just you do it, and it always seems to come right. But
You do it by sight. I think that's the word. I think that's the phrase. It's done by sight.
Yeah, I'm passing it on. I mean, my daughter learned by sight, and she's cooking and she's doing everything the way I did. She's not measuring. But now my grandson, who wants to do it, I'm going to teach him the right way to measure to make sure he gets it right.
So, Janice and Carol, when are we going to see this book?
well, we're going to start on it soon.
Next week or so, we're going to
We're
start
going to
looking
start
at it
looking at doing it.
and getting some recipes together. We're going to get other people from AXA UK involved as well. I believe what we're doing is a 7-day menu.
Yeah.
But this will be for Anguilla, because obviously every island cooks a little bit different. As I've just heard Gloria say that she does fried dumplings. Now, Anguilla will call them fried cakes. So, it's a difference in how we do stuff. I mean, Antigua call conky dumplings dukana, whereas Anguilla calls them, like I said, conky dumplings. So they're probably the same thing, but we just name them differently.
The ones
And Dominicans call it bakes.
There you go.
Johnny cakes.
We would call bakes Johnny cakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Johnny
We
cakes.
call-
The fried ones.
Okay.
But I think there's an intention, because at the time we were sitting around the forum when Janice came up with that idea, but it was like, okay, well, let's do a partnership. So even though AXA UK will have the, and for those of you that don't know, the airport code for Anguilla is AXA. So that is their shortened terminology. So that means that, that's Anguilla. So they'll do the Anguilla recipes. Jazz, which is Jamaica Association Slough, they're looking at collating the Jamaican recipes. But what we're going to do in conjunction with each other is we're going to have a Caribbean recipe book. And Janice, AXA UK, they'll be taking the responsibility of leading on that, but they'll interact with Jazz, they'll interact with Dominica Association, they'll interact with, many of the other islands, and we will be producing a collective book. Because one of the things is that through history, island to island, we've been divided, but there's a call to bring us back together, and
Absolutely.
I think that I'm exercising this, it's individual groups having their own intentions, their own programs, their own activities, but 3 times a year, let's come collectively together as Caribbean people, growing up in Great Britain, and let's show Great Britain the culture of Caribbean people and show that we are working together and that kind of thing. And I think, as Carol said the other day so eloquently, we went to school with so much different people from different islands. So that kind of mentality that some of our parents may have had, don't bother with that person from there. I don't worry with them Cartesians. I don't worry with them Jamaicans. We kind of put that mentality asleep because we went to school together and we formed a relationship as Black people, irrespective of where. So I think it's important that that's going to be the agenda of the forum, the consortium of the group coming together. Our agenda is to represent the Caribbean on a whole and to fly our flags collectively together. So,
oh, by the way, can I just say Happy Anguilla Day to everyone? Today is Anguilla Day.
Happy Anguilla Day. Yes, that's very true. But also, Tina, as you talk about food, you have this really nice story about what I always called Johnny Cake, but actually there's a story behind your one. Yeah. Are you going to sort of share a little bit about it with us? Give an explanation to the guys.
I will, but the thing is that because I do storytelling, that's part of what I do, and this story is a story that's dedicated to my auntie, and she was a person that came here. So the story was that my mum was the eldest of 10 children. When my mum left, there was 7 of them born. There was 3 born when my mum came to England. And I think my mum must have arrived here around 1958. And she basically then promised her siblings that she would send for them. So the 2 that come behind her, she did send for them. And her and my dad, when they worked, like the Windrush used to, they send the money back via the post office. And basically, because my auntie knew that my mum had promised to send for her, the story starts, and I'm going to go into storytelling mode. So my auntie, I'm speaking as if I'm my auntie, but she was like, the excitement when the letter arrived that I was finally going to be joining my sister in England. Wow, I cannot believe it. I will be traveling to the motherland. As I am so excited about leaving the island, I'm also apprehensive because my mother and father have an abusive relationship. My father was one who drank rum, played dominoes and drank rum. And although now I was going to join my big brother and sister, I feel worried about my mother. So the night before I was due to travel, I started to pray. And as I prayed, I cried. And my mom came and she caressed me. She said, my dear child, you are going to join your brother and sister for a better life. And with that, I felt comforted that, the right decision was made. The next morning, my mother was up before dawn, before the sunrise. And she was in the kitchen baking what we call Johnny Cake. I later learned that the terminology is journey cake. It's a cake for a journey, but with the accent, Johnny Cake. So as my mom took out the ingredients, she said, my child, when you go on that iron board to join your brother and sister, she said, at times, life will throw you things. And just like this flour started as wheat in a field, and it went through a process, it was put to all matter of things and made into wheat flour. You're going to need water, a bit of nourishment. And when you put life that offer you sometimes bitter, like the salt, and sweet like the sugar. So my dear child, when you miss your family, knead these ingredients together. And in the same way you need us, just knead the ingredients together. And as you knead it, think of us. And with that, she started to knead the flour. And she said, the more that you knead us, think of us and knead it. And when you finish, take time and let the mixture settle. Take time with your decisions and make it settle. Then put it in the oven. You're going to have a bit of heat. But then this cake will nourish you. It will sustain you. And it will nurture you when I can't be with you. And with that, Ma turned and continued baking. Later in life, I learned that the ingredients that my mother just gave me would at times sustain me, nourish me, and nurture me. And many times on my arrival to England and through life, any time that it gave me the variety, I would just take out my flour, my water, my sugar, and knead it together. So that's kind of basically an extract out of the story, the journey cake. And it goes through, it's telling, my auntie's life in the UK. And it goes through very many chapters, like at a time when she lost her daughter, 23 years old. But she grabs those ingredients, and the kneading, it just kind of restores that journey cake that would sustain her, nourish her, provide for her through her journey. So eventually it will be a play. You'll see it in full acting mode and the songs and everything that comes with it, So, yeah, that's the story of the journey cake.
Thank you for giving us that extract. And my reason for that is because it's about food, and I just love the story about the journey cake, but actually bakes, really. But you talk about nourishment. So tell me, Gloria, you have a passion for nutrition as well as food. So tell me about that.
Before I do, it's just hearing that we're just again demonstrate that we're more alike than we're different. Because if you read a Jamaican cookbook, as I said earlier, that although I refer to them as fried dumpling this morning, in Jamaica they're called Johnny cake, and they come from the fact that they were made to take on journeys. Whether you were going to the field or you were going on an outing or wherever, you made the journey cake that became Johnny cake. So, again, having a cookbook, we're more alike than different. Yes, I mean, nutrition is important to me. And I think particularly at this time, there's never been a greater need for us to be aware of, our nutrition and what we are putting in our bodies and building, our system, building whether it's our digestive system or our immune system, particularly the immune system around the coronavirus. So yes, health and well-being, I do take products to supplement, because again, in the Caribbean, you're getting fresh food. You're getting food that you know when you reaped it, and it was literally minutes from reaping up into cooking. And here, by the time we get the food, it's traveled for so long and from so far that it's got no nourishment in it. So I do pride myself in making sure that as well as enjoying those things, because despite the fact that they've traveled, there still be the flavours and the things that remind us of the Caribbean or wherever, or even things that are grown here by the time you get it. So I do make a point of making sure that I supplement my diet. And right now, I'd like to encourage every person from the Caribbean to make sure that they're not just depending on the sun for the vitamin D, but they're putting additional vitamin C and vitamin D and zinc and all of that in their bodies, because, we need it. The body needs it. So, yeah, important.
Thank you for that. So, guys, going back to Carol and Janice.
Now, what Gloria just said with regards to the vitamin C's, my greatest thing all the way through this coronavirus was getting fresh lemons with ginger and turmeric and put them in hot water and drinking that. That's my vitamins. That's my clearance. That's what I did.
So hold on, Janice. So we just call that lemonade, right?
Yes. What is your vitamin C?
Well done.
And then on top of that as well, when I go to the Caribbean, first thing I drink a lot of bush tea. And sometimes I bring it back, I freeze it, and then when I want it, I take it up and I put it in a hot cup of water, and that's my vitamins. So to me, that is a Caribbean way of doing it. And that's the lemongrass, the bay leaves, all of them. Bay leaves you could put in porridge, you could put it in flour dumpling, in flour pap. You could put bay leaves and you could put it in your your curry or your stew meats, bay leaves is a great concept to have in your cupboards. So yes.
Yes. Wonderful. Thank you. So when should I expect to see a first draft of your book?
I would say before the end of the year, I would give it that.
Obviously, because it's a collation of other people and other countries. It depends on how quickly they can get their recipes to us as well. So, but we are working on ours.
Okay. So by the time we get to Black History Month, which is October, there'll be sort of a lot more to talk about.
We will definitely have a draft by October.
Yeah.
That's what I want to hear.
Oh, okay.
But as I said, we will be relying on other people as well. But we will be on point.
Okay. Gloria, you were...
I'm of the opinion that the Jamaican cookery book, and I know we will be collating later on, but the Jamaican part of the cookery book will be well done by, October. And I was just pointing outside, Janice, because I have a big bay leaf tree out there, so use the fresh bay leaf.
So you have one outside your house?
Yes.
Oh, you guys are amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much for just being able to participate on this call, for sharing with us, for making this actually happen. This has been such an amazing experience. Yeah, I hope to be able to do a lot more. So thank you. This is a wrap.
As well as the sharing, it's been great fun, great laughs. And
It's been a great laugh. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
all
you.
the laughs we can get, we just need all the laughs we can get. So
So true.
Thank
In
you for hosting.
this day and age, yes, we do.
Thank you. It's good to be with you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Much, guys. Anyway, have an enjoyable rest of the evening and watch this space.